Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi Fiqh class. We are doing the kitab known as A'la Sunan of Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah, and we're still dealing with the chapters regarding Tahara. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we are coming to the conclusion with regards to the female, not exactly the conclusion as such because there's more chapters, but the chapter here completes the chapters with regards to bleeding and things of that sort. So let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we're in the chapter Babu Akthar in Nifas, the chapter with regards to the maximum time that Nifas can be. So hadith number 358 عن جابر رضي الله عنه قال وقت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم للنفساء 40 يوما، رواه الطبراني في الأوسط، وفيه أشعث بن سوار وثقه ابن معين واختلف في الاحتجاج به كما في مجمع الزوائد. Hadrat Jabir رضي الله عنه, he said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stipulated a maximum time for a woman in nifas, that it is a maximum of 40 days. Imam al-Tabarani rahimahullah reports this hadith in al-Mu'ajam al-Awsat, and in the chain of narration is a narrator by the name of Ash'ath ibn Sawar. He's graded as being authentic by Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, but other ulama differ. Some grade him authentic, some say he's not. So here, therefore, there's ikhtilaf about using him as proof, because some say he's suitable to take from and others say he's not. Nonetheless, at the very least, it's a mukhtalaf fi, and as you know, the principle we've done many times is that when there's ikhtilaf with regard to a narrator, then we say it's you say one, you say six, we say half a dozen. So therefore, the fact that one muhaddith differs with another one, that's that's the individualness. It's not Qur'an and Sunnah, for example. Therefore, if one grades it as being weak and the other one say it's strong, we are under no obligation to accept it just because the one said it is weak. So therefore, this narration here, we say it's fine, you can use it. This narration is found in Al-Mu'ajam Awsat of Imam al-Tabarani, and this is from Majma' al-Zawaid, the statement over here. Moving on, 359 عن أم سلمة رضي الله عنها قالت النفساء تقعد في عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد نفاسها 40 يوما، رواه الخمسة إلا النساء، واللفظ لأبي داود، وفي لفظ له لم يأمرها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقضاء صلاة النفاس، وصححه الحاكم كما في بلوغ المرام. وسكت أبو داود عن الطريقين وقال في فتح القدير بعد نقل اللفظ الأول، قال النووي حديث حسن. Okay, so the last hadith of this chapter is reported by Hadrat Salama radiallahu anha, who said that a woman in the state of nifas used to stay, stop from performing salah in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for 40 days. In other words, her maximum nifas time used to be 40 days in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, this hadith is reported by Al-Khamsa. That's not a new book of hadith. Al-Khamsa is the five ulama of hadith, hence why it said illa Nasai, meaning Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, and Ibn Majah, not Nasai. So those five kitabs, the hadith is found in there. And walafdhu li Abi Dawud, the specific wording here is found from Sunan Abu Dawud. And Imam Abu Dawud also in his other narration, it mentions that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to not command a woman to make qada of the salah which was missed during the time of nifas. Like a woman in a state of Haydh, she don't make qada of the salah which she must. She only makes qada of the fast. So likewise, Haydh and nifas, only fasts are made qada of, not the salah. The narration is graded as being authentic by Imam al-Hakim. This is mentioned by Imam Ibn Hajar in Bulugh al-Maram. Imam Abu Dawud narrated both these narrations and he kept silent on it. And you know the principle, when Imam Abu Dawud reports a hadith and he keeps silent on it, it means he deems it to be authentic. It's mentioned in Fath al-Qadir of Imam Ibn al-Humam, rahimahullah. After mentioning the first narration, meaning the original wording of the hadith 359, he says that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah graded it saying that the hadith is Hasan, meaning it is good, it's suitable to quote. So not just to quote, but to use as dalil. So at the end of the day, the narration is suitable, and thus we establish that the maximum nifas is 40 days. So if a woman bleeds after giving birth for more than 40 days, then 40 days will be cut off nifas, and everything thereafter will be istihada. Okay, so it's not exactly anything new with regards to nifas laws, since we have done that previously with regard to hayd and so on and so forth. So therefore, let's push further on into the new chapter. And this chapter is باب أن الحائض والنفساء والجنوب لا يقرؤون شيئا من القرآن. A very hot topic in modern times because of Salafis having their own viewpoint in this regard. And nonetheless, so this chapter is the chapter that a woman in a state of hayd and a woman in a state of nifas and a woman and a man who is in a state of janaba, they cannot recite anything of the Qur'an. That's the title heading. Now let's read the narration and then we can come on. So hadith number 360 عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تقرأ الحائض ولا الجنوب شيئا من القرآن أخرجه الترمذي. So Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he reported Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had said that a woman in a state of hayd and a person in a state of janaba may not recite anything of the Quran. This hadith is reported by Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah. Now we've got two more hadith in the three more hadith in the in this chapter before we come to its conclusion. So I'm going to read the hadith and then come and summarize the mas'ala at the end. So let's move on to the next hadith 361 عن علي رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرئنا القرآن على كل حال ما لم يكن جنبا رواه الترمذي وقال حسن صحيح وفي بلوغ المرام وصححه ابن حبان. Hadrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to recite the Quran to us in every state, as long as, except if Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was in a state of janaba. This hadith is reported by Imam at-Tirmidhi, and Imam at-Tirmidhi grades it as being Hasanun Sahih, which means it is totally authentic. Is mentioned in Bulugh al-Maram of Imam ibn Hajar that Imam ibn Hibban graded it as being authentic as well. Moving on 362 عن علي رضي الله عنه قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ ثم قرأ شيئا من القرآن قال هكذا لمن ليس بجنوب فأما الجنوب فلا ولا آية رواه أبو يعلى ورجاله موثقون كما في مجمع الزوائد. Hadrat Ali رضي الله عنه, he said Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, I saw Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم perform wudu and then recite a portion of the Quran. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, this is for the one who is not in a state of janaba. As for the one who is in a state of janaba, then no, he cannot read not even an ayah of the Quran. Imam Abu Ya'la al-Mawsili reports this hadith in his Musnad, and the chain of narrators are authentic, and this is mentioned in Majma' al-Zawaid. And the last hadith for this chapter, which is 363, عن عبد الله بن رواحة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى أن يقرأ أحدنا القرآن وهو جنوب رواه الدارقطني وقال إسناده صالح. Hadrat Abdullah ibn Rawaha radiallahu anhu, he narrated that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam prohibited us from reciting the Quran while we are in a state of janaba. Imam ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah reports this in his Sunan, and he says that the chain of narration is salih. Salih means good, so it's another terminology of muhaddithin that when they want to grade a narration as being authentic, they use the term salih as well. So like Hassan and Salih, they on that level. So in other words, it's like saying hadithun hasanun, for example. So the chain of narration is good, so it's suitable to use and take dalil from and everything of the sort. So those are the hadith. Now let's go back and just look at some of the masail. So a woman in a state of janaba and a man in a state of hayd. Now not a woman in a state of janaba, a woman in a state of hayd. Hayd and nifas are treated like twins in the sense that like I just mentioned previously, neither one of them make qada of the salah, which is must. They make qada of the fasts, which are must. So that's how it goes. So when it comes to the state of reciting the Quran, then what applies to the ha'idah applies to the woman in nifas as well. So therefore, there's no need to mention the woman in nifas specifically because it's still the same thing, which is the state of bleeding. So therefore, the first issue we're dealing with here is non-recitation of the Quran. So in the state of a person of janaba, a person in janaba, either you have water or you don't have water. But the issue is not, well, how should I say, the water, because if you don't have water, you make tayammum. And if you have water, you make ghusl. But one way or the other, it's quick for you to be able to get into a state of purity. But yes, a woman in a state of hayd, even if she goes and have 100 ghusls, she's still deemed as being in a state of impurity on account of the fact that she cannot have ghusl while she's having hayd. That's how it goes. So nonetheless, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says she may not recite anything of the Quran. And same with the person in a state of janaba. And like I say, the same applies to the woman in nifas as well. It's a famous mas'ala, like I say, everybody knows it. It's been spoken about a million and one times. But nonetheless, in short, what is okay? Let me read the next narration so we can put it further. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying this is for. I don't know, let me do it one at a time. There's different points to touch on in the different hadith. So anyway, the first point is that what is not allowed in a state of janaba when we talk about a non-recitation. What is talking about non-recitation is recitation of the Quran. So in a state of not be janaba or haid and nifas, if a woman is in the state or happen to be a man, whatever, and they are reciting something for the intention of dua, then it is permissible. So a man, for example, he's in a state of janaba, and then he gets up. Maybe he lives out there in a village where he's going outside to have a bath because there's no bath inside the house. So he goes outside and he sees something moving there, and he thinks it's a jinn. So he recites Ayatul Kursi for protection. It's permissible despite the fact that he's in janaba, despite the fact that Ayatul Kursi is part of the Quran, but yeah, he's reciting it with the intention of dua, so therefore it's permissible. But if you were to be now just going out, some people are whistling over there and singing in the shower, so he's reciting Ayatul Kursi in the shower, that's not permissible, because then he's reading it with the intention of qira'ah. Same thing being recited. The intention is what makes the distinction between the two. So if a woman recites Surah Fatiha for ruqya purposes, for shifa purposes, no problem at all. If she recites the mu'awwadhatayn, no problem at all. The different ayat of the Quran which are there for reasons such as this, like shifa and to remove sihr and the evil eye and things of the sort. These type of things, when you're reading it with the intention of dua, then it is permissible because then it ceases to be qira'ah. Qira'ah means the recitation, and this is not qira'ah, this is dua. So that intention that is in your mind when you recite it, that is what is paramount. It determines permissibility from impermissibility. Okay, question that came through is what I was about to discuss as well, or actually on the third narration. But let me answer it here one time. What about the tajweed lesson, reading ayah in a broken way, not fluently? So when we talking about the recitation of the Quran, then what is uh, not allowed is to recite a whole ayah. So if you were to read Alhamdu Lillahi Rabbil Alameen, maybe you teach children and then you tend to break it up in this way, but if you were teaching in this manner, then this will be allowed despite each of these words being a part of an ayah, but neither of them are a full ayah, and therefore because you're not reciting a full ayah, it does not count as qira'ah. If it came to salah and you were reading alhamdu lillahi, and you read Rabbil Alameen, you can't say I read enough Qira'ah and I'm going to go into Ruku. We'd say no, it's not sufficient. Nonetheless, so the point being that when it is done in this manner, where it is broken up, then this too, there is permissibility for it. So once again, I should clarify this point over here that the ulama have stated that this is for somebody who is teaching the Quran, for example, not for somebody who thinks I'm going to make some sort of loophole. So I want to recite my for example, maybe I read one page a day of the Quran. So now I'm going to break the page down and read it one word at then that you defeating the objective of it all. So nonetheless, with the recitation of a certain ayat with the intention of dua, full proper Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, you're reading it in a full proper manner. While your intention is dua, that is permissible. And when you are a person who is teaching the Quran to others and you are breaking the ayah down like this, then this also becomes permissible. But like I say, neither of these should be, you can lie to yourself. You do not lie to Allah. So if you think, well, who's going to know? Allah knows what's in your heart. So Allah knows the fact that you think you are outsmarting somebody and you reading Quran even though you're in a state of Haydh. So it doesn't work that way. You stay within the limits of permissibility. You're reading this for dua, so be it. You're reading this because you're teaching somebody, then so be it. Or let me not restrict it only to teaching. Maybe, for example, if you are, maybe, for example, your teacher told you you must practice your tajweed now because you're saying alhamdu, alhamdu, for example. So now they tell you alhamdu. So you're going to be alhamdu, 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 like that. Then in that case, it will also be allowed because saying alhamdu does not make it a whole ayah. So there has to be reason behind it. The point simply being, do not think you can find a loophole and a way around the prohibitions. So that was the first narration. The second narration was that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to read the Quran to us as long as Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not in a state of janaba. Okay, it's quite straightforward like the previous hadith, so nothing much inside there. Third one uh, is has one additional point, which is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam making wudu and then reading a portion of the Quran. So what is meant here? Touching the Quran or not? We know the fact is that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not read. There was no mushaf as such. There was parchments. It was written on pieces of bone and so on and so forth. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam couldn't read. So obviously Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not picking up a page, as we would say now, of the Quran and reading it that way. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was reciting from memory. But it is so to clarify the mas'ala over here, it is permissible for a person to recite the Quran without wudu. So if you are reading, for example, you have no wudu right now and you're reading Surah Fatiha audibly from memory, there's no harm in that. It is better to be reading the Quran in a state of wudu. And hence why you will find it is from the adab, the etiquettes of the recitation of the Quran, that you recite the Quran in a state of wudu. But if you don't have wudu, as long as you have ghusl, then there's no harm, there's no sin if you were to recite the Quran in that state of hadath asghar, as we call it, the state where you require a wudu. So like I say, maybe for example, you on the road, so I'm heading there, I'm gonna get my water there now. So I can't, I don't have wudu right now at this moment, but I'm busy reading my daily ma'mulat. For example, I must read so much of the Quran, so I'm busy reading it from memory like this. There's no harm. You cannot touch the Quran when you don't have wudu. So, but okay, that's coming in the next chapter. But nonetheless, so that's the first part. It is better to be in a state of wudu when you recite the Quran from memory, but it is not a requirement. So this is what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam done, that which is always better. The next part is wala ayah, not even an ayah. Now, that's why what was mentioned previously, and that's why I said the question you asked, we were coming to it at this hadith over here, not an ayah. So hence, alhamdu lillahi rabbil alamin. You are breaking down an ayah. Hence, you are not reading alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Then you are reading an ayah. But while you are breaking it, you are not reciting an ayah. You are reading portions of an ayah. So therefore, the portions way will be acceptable, but reading it in a one whole full way will not. And then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam prohibited us from reading the Quran in a state of janaba. Okay, that's also same thing at the end of the day. And yeah, I think we'll stop on this point for tonight, inshallah, because the next one has got more hadith in it and we won't have time to be able to finish it all. But it's another important point on touching the Quran in a state of not having wudu. To complete and summarize the topic over here, a when a person does not have ghusl, then you may not touch the Quran, you may not read the Quran, be it from memory or whatever, uh, from a phone or anything of the sort. Yeah, you cannot do so because the qira'ah is what is not allowed. So as long as qira'ah is prohibited, anything which falls under the purview of qira'ah will be prohibited as well. So because you For example, okay, question over here. Can we type ayat from memory in a state of Haydh to practice revision? Yes, the the ulama have actually said that this would be allowed. They spoke obviously now of writing it, but nonetheless, if you are typing it, the same ruling would apply that it would be permissible. Number one, they spoke about painting, like that, writing it in that manner, painting or writing by hand. So you're not touching the text that is written. It's your hand touching a pen. The pen is writing it there. So there's no direct. You're not doing finger painting. If you're doing finger painting, that's a different story. Then you're actually touching the ayat itself, which is not allowed. But if while you're using a pen or you sitting on your computer and you're busy typing over there, then this does not fall under qira'ah, so therefore it does not fall under prohibition. And number two, you are not touching the ayat, so therefore it is allowed. But if you are, for example, touching the ayat, while because maybe for example it's a touch screen, so you have to touch this ayat and move it into place and things like this here, then what is prohibited is the fact that you are touching the Quran, which is separate from recitation. So recitation is there's no harm because you're not reading, but uh, what is problematic here is the fact that you are touching an ayah of the Quran. So that is what the important point to keep in mind. But yeah, okay. So that being said, I hope the topic is clear. Like I say, it's a extremely common question, famous masail, things a person has been hearing all the years. So it's not exactly something new, but nonetheless, it's something people always ask and fight and debate about. And nonetheless, now you have some dalil at least on your side to understand why a person does not recite the Quran in a state of not having ghusl. Now, most of the narrations mentioned with regards to janaba, but the illah that is derived from the ahadith is the fact that janaba is a state of needing a ghusl. Hayd is a state needing ghusl. Nifas is a state needing ghusl. Thing which the common thread running through them all is the state needing ghusl. So therefore, although Janaba may have been mentioned in the three ahadith, but because it is a state which needs ghusl, therefore we apply to the other two as well, because they are also states that need ghusl. But nonetheless, like you could see, the very first hadith stipulates the woman in the haid as well. So therefore, it's not like it's sucked out of thin air. It's come from a solid basis nonetheless. But that being said, we end in for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.